Hello and welcome to another episode of Shortcut, the podcast that takes you on a shortcut to developer experience, developer productivity, and product engineering. I'm Morten.
And I'm Marilag.
And we're back again after a short break of
6 months?
small 6 months. Yeah, but what have you been up to the past 6 months?
A lot. And I feel like we need to spend a little bit of time talking about what we have been up to, why we haven't been releasing new episodes. But I also don't want to dwell on that because that's not something our dear audience wants to hear. But yeah, it's been quite a transformative half of year for me. A lot of changes on my company, device, changing direction, changing a little bit the business structure, which is really exciting. I'm learning a lot on that front. But the biggest change for me also is that I started a new project, a startup product that I'm really passionate about. And it's all about the EU pay transparency and workplace equity. I can talk a lot about that on the next episode. But yeah, I have ventured into a new startup on top of device. So lots of learning experiences so far in the last 6 months. What about you?
What about me? So a lot has been going on at work, at my workplace at least. So the company has been through a large transformation. So a lot of changes a lot of changes over the past 3 months, which means I've now ended up in a new organization called Enterprise AI, that I will be part of. Yeah, that I will be part of going forward.
I am very curious. Enterprise AI. So what is that a department or is it a business unit?
It's a business unit, I guess you would say. We call it an organization. An organization within an organization. There's a lot of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still super new. So I think we've only been in it for maybe a month and a half now. So still super new. So there's a lot of stuff to uncover and hopefully a lot of interesting stuff that will take place in 26. For now, we've started to dip our toes, at least where I'm sitting in the teams that I'm part of in our department. Started looking at upskilling. And for the developers that are now part of this new organization, who maybe haven't done so much work around AI before, upskilling them to be able to work on product development that incorporates AI in some way, shape, or form.
I think, though, it's obvious to say that the entire industry is on the same journey as of the moment. Like, we need to upskill. But what is the game plan? Like, I know that every enterprise is out there, whether you're a small enterprise, medium enterprise, big enterprise, is still kind of trying to figure out the learning strategy, the upskilling strategy. So I'm actually curious, what's your role in that? Are you part of the one building the learning path, or are you the one learning, or both?
Yeah, I guess both. But yeah, so we focus on software developers. So I mean, there's of course a lot of different angles, right? So there's another department that are looking at employees across the organization and their adoption and usage of AI. And then as we are within this organization called Enterprise AI, there are some people that of course are very skilled already. There's a department called AI Foundation. Of course, they know a lot already. And so there's data engineers, data scientists there. So we also have to balance kind of looking at different persona groups and seeing, okay, these people probably already know what does it mean to do a fine-tuning of a large language model. Mm-hmm. While for the developers, maybe they have dabbled with copilots in their IDE. So we get into these different areas, different persona groups. For us, we've started looking at, or at least focusing on, say, the developers that need to start using AI as part of a product, and maybe taking something that's been fine-tuned, machine learning aspect of it, taking that and putting it into a product that users can actually use. Mm-hmm. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is AI in the software development lifecycle, and actually start using it more and more to your advantage and gaining productivity as part of that, or maybe taking some shortcuts, I guess you could say. but I mean, but it's different aspects of it, right? So it's vastly different, and both of them contain a lot of different areas that we could dive into.
I can ask a lot of questions about those two aspects, like using AI in your software development lifecycle. So basically AI in software engineering, product engineering, and then the other one is building products that have AI capabilities or extending the existing AI capabilities.
Yeah.
But before we go into that, I'm actually curious because it's called enterprise IT, and I think a lot of enterprises are actually curious. Is this the same organization that's responsible also for upskilling those that are outside the digital organization, like outside the engineering? Like if you need to upskill people from, let's say, HR, the business, from the enterprise to do enterprise workflows using AI, is this the same organization?
Yeah. So it actually is. So of course, there's within the organization there are many different departments that have different focuses. And one department is focusing on the overall adoption of AI. So they're both looking at, say, the office worker who's using Excel, PowerPoint, doing different planning activities for them to see and utilize AI in their day-to-day work. It can also be through maybe some of the digital products that are created or available, how they can use that to get insights that they can use to make better decisions. So that's one aspect. Then of course there's something for leaders as well, to have an understanding of how can we actually utilize AI in our organization, and in those areas or those pockets of the organization where they're sitting, how can you utilize it? So getting a better understanding of AI in general will be an area. So broadly speaking, like a general employee using AI, and I think it's actually interesting that that department actually has a lot of UI UX designers as part of it. So they're actually the ones that will be going out, talking to people, learning from their experiences, learning what they see as difficult. Also, I think many of us has tried ChatGPT in some way, shape, or form, right? But that's not the only way to use AI.
Yeah.
And it's also a very different way of interacting with something. Like maybe you're used to using Google search, or you can get something, you can do something in Excel sheet, but here you can chat your way, you can prompt and get answers. It's also a different way of working, right?
Right, for sure. And that's the challenge, right? Because AI is ubiquitous, so you really have to be clear on the boundaries of on your strategy, especially on upscaling, like and not tackle it, what do you call that, where you just throw the ball out there and then figure out where it hits, right? So a very well planned strategy on upscaling for the enterprise workers, or what you would call knowledge-based workers, and then upscaling for software engineers that not necessarily are building AI-enabled products, because you don't always have that. That's also probably one of the things that we learned these last few years with AI, that not everything has to be AI, but it's, of course, there are some really, really good use cases where there is AI, and then that's a different kind of learning. Yeah. So for those who for that area where we just want to increase the productivity of your engineers who are building different kind of products, then that's one target. That's one way of tackling it. So what about you? What is your area there, though? Are you more focused on the upskilling for your, like, also for yourself and for your team, for the just general AI in engineering and software development lifecycle, or is it in the product engineering of AI enabled features?
Yeah. So I'm mostly into, say, the product development. So where we build a product that's utilizing AI somehow. Maybe it's to provide insights to the users of the product that they're using. So actually taking, say, the input or using the output from a model that's been trained on a specific thing, taking that, putting it into a product, making it user-friendly, so that the users don't necessarily need to know that there's a large language model behind it, but to them it's just they get a lot of information that they can use. It's easy accessible, so they get the information that they need for the decisions that they need to make. So with the product aspect of it, that I think that's what's interesting, and I think that's what we, at least from my perspective, that we're trying to narrow in on right now, and what we're doing, and when we're looking at the learning paths, looking at as a software developer who's used to building digital products. So certainly they have a lot of skills and they have a lot of things in their tool belt. They've learned a lot about DevOps practices. They know how to do CI/CD. So they can do many things, right? But maybe the AI aspect is fairly new to them. So there's a set of new things that they have to learn. And those things is what we're trying to dive into and see what's the foundational. So if we build on their tool belt of what they already know as a software developer, but what do they need to know when they go into next year, for example, or a year from now, when they're building digital products that utilize AI. So if a data engineer or data scientist comes to them with a model that's been trained for a specific task, maybe, like how do you take that and put it into a product? Maybe you need to know, I think more or less everyone has heard about the MCP concept now, model context protocol. So I think that's certainly something that you as a developer will need to know in the future. What does that actually mean? How do you build an MCP server? How do you utilize it from a client perspective? Maybe you're even building an AI chat into your own product that the users can interact with. And then what does it mean to talk with agents of different kinds? Maybe you have specialized agents. So I think there's also some patterns and some practices that as a developer we need to know at least what does it mean. It might not be that we need to be able to fine-tune a model, but I think we need to understand what does it actually mean to fine-tune a model, and is that something that as a developer I would take part in, or is that something that would be done by a data scientist maybe? So I think generally a better understanding of these different concepts, because then we can also like have a seat in the table at some point, right? And actually be engaging and saying, okay, well, we know that you're building this part, but we take it and put it into product, so we know kind of where to take it from there.
Right. So the overall strategy when it comes to finding the people and the resources who will build this is that we use the existing, our traditional software engineers, the ones who already have, or hire the really good senior software engineers or software engineers that not necessarily have like a very deep knowledge or vast amount of experience building AI-driven functionalities and features, because obviously that's not sustainable. That's hard to find nowadays, right? We have a lot of data scientists and data experts, but software developers, software engineers that are building AI-enabled products are still quite rare. So the strategy is to keep them or find them and then upskill them in this area. And that's kind of in full stack. Like you talk about MCP, which is a lot in the back end, which is basically, relearning how you build APIs so that it is MCP ready, or reuse or wrap your existing APIs, which hopefully are well-designed APIs, so the MCP would also be like good quality, right? But thinking it's still the same skill. You would still need those skills.
And security. And that's also a skill that we already have. We already have that as a developer, but when we come to AI, there's probably something that you need to think about differently. Because can an agent just go off and do whatever? Or is there a boundary that we need to keep it within? Do we need to think about security in a different manner than we did before?
Yeah, so it's not like I forget everything I have learned so far because that's an obsolete skill, but it's like you need to build on top of that, and you need to find people who already have those, traditional skills that can very quickly build on top of it. But like I mentioned, it's full stack, because now we talk about MCP backend, but then you mentioned that you have UI UX, because they're also changing, right? The way they design interfaces is very, very different. So that's part of your upskilling in your team as well.
So I mean, there's certainly a lot of different aspects and a lot of things to build upon. I think the most important thing, or at least what I think about a lot, is what do we need to add to our tool belt as a developer to be continue to be relevant in the future. Right. Just like with DevOps back in the day, we had to learn to build pipelines, we had to learn how to do infrastructure as code. So that expanded our tool belt. It doesn't mean that we became IT professionals or network experts because we are building cloud infrastructure, but we know what it means to build out these different components and to build infrastructure. But I think we also seen with platform engineering that when we get into the Kubernetes space, there's a lot of things to uncover there, and that can be very specialized. And I think some of that, I think we're also seeing in the AI space that developers can do a lot, but there's also limitations, right? A developer shouldn't go and become a data scientist just because we're working with AI. I think it's fine that then there are other people that have that speciality. So we don't go and okay, now we need to kind of re-educate ourselves to become data scientists. That's not the point. But we have to learn something about it, and we have to have an understanding of at least the basics and foundation, so we can be part of the conversations with these data scientists or data engineers. So we're not like a big question mark when someone says, I'm building an ETL pipeline.
And now you also mentioned, operations part and how we learn DevOps. We didn't become network engineers or experts in running clusters, but now we also have to rethink the way we want our products to run and to be deployed and to be maintained and to be monitored, because now this is AI driven. So now scalability, like you mentioned security, now scalability and availability, or the reliability of your product also changes when you build it and when you write the code, because there's, when you're connecting to an LLM somewhere outside your own space, that's a different way of thinking. So you also need to upskill in that.
And I mean, observability is of course still relevant. That's something we need to make sure that all the services are still up and running. So even if it's an agent that's deployed as a single deployment unit, we need to make sure that it scales, it can handle the requests that are coming in. We need to make sure that we have good insight into what it's doing. We have to have the security boundaries. So all of these things is something that we already know as developers. It's just with some new concepts thrown in. Right? So there's a lot of things that we can reuse, but there's also some new things that we have to learn.
So how are you approaching the building of the learning path, the learning strategy, at least for your team? But just to be sure, you're still an engineering manager, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you're still responsible for the growth of and upskilling of people, and the engineers are really happy and healthy. Developer experience. Okay, so how are you approaching this?
So I think, regardless of this new organization, I think as an engineering manager, you have to think about these things. I think we see in a lot of companies that they start thinking about how can we actually utilize AI in our products. So I think for any engineering manager, they need to start thinking about how can we build learning paths for our developers that makes sense. But here and now, it's just in a bigger scale, right? We have to do it for many different teams and across many departments, thinking about what is it that people should learn. So I think what I've been focusing on so far has been how do we build up the foundation of getting to know these patterns and practices within AI, especially the different concepts, right? I think it's good to have a general understanding, or at least a foundational understanding of the concepts. And then from there we can build on, and then very, very fast it becomes tool specific. It can be something around workflows, then you look at N8N, or when we look at cloud, then there's some specific services within Azure, there's some specific services within AWS. And then we can start looking at maybe there's some things that we can build on. Microsoft has a big catalog within Microsoft Learn, where there's actually a lot of good information that you can utilize. And then I guess as an added bonus, you can actually do certifications. So there's a little bit of an added benefit, both from, let's say, a company perspective and engineering perspective, because you get that, and that's now part of your tool belt. So you can take that whatever you're going to do in the future, you'll still have that certification, right? So and then I think I have a .NET background, and most of the people I work with have a .NET background. And I think when we get into AI and machine learning and these different concepts, it's difficult to not, or it's difficult to avoid Python. So I think that's also something we are talking a little bit about, and saying, well, I think it's good that as a .NET developer, did you actually get your feet wet with Python. So if you haven't tried it out before, at least get started, get a good understanding of it, because it's difficult to get going without knowing some kind of Python. Because I think the tooling that you come across, a lot of that will be focused on Python. Even if you're doing Jupyter notebooks and these types of things, it's just difficult to navigate in that if you don't know anything about Python.
Right.
So I think for many programming languages, it's fairly easy to jump between, but there's still, I think there can be a some benefit in maybe diving a little bit deeper and getting a good understanding of how you write Python code.
Right. Which can now be written also by AI.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Right. Like, but you still that's the thing. You still need to learn it. It's like not because AI can write a Python code for you as a .NET developer doesn't mean that you don't need to learn the language. But now, I mean, the level of depth, like the depth of what you need to know, has drastically changed. Like before, I wouldn't want to put anything on production, and as I feel super confident and I have a lot of experiences or time spent on a specific language or tool set because I want to make sure I have that confidence to put something on production. That means you need to go really deep. But now with learning, there's it's probably less deep because then you also have the agent to help you and ensure, of course, you still need to be able to check it, that you're already writing something good from the get-go.
Yeah. I think also it's actually an area where we as software engineers can actually help out on the data side of things, because of course the data engineers and data scientists, they will bring a lot of stuff to us, which we can benefit from. But I think we actually have a lot of experience with engineering practices in many different regards, right? Whether that's security or patterns or testing, doing unit tests or integration tests, whatever that might be. That we can actually bring that to those other types of roles, and kind of meet somewhere in the middle and say, okay, well, you can learn something from us, we can learn something from you, and we work well together on these types of things.
Yeah, that's a really good perspective there, right? Because we know that analysts do their things the different way. They can kind of obsess in the calculations and really look at patterns in the data. And use all the time on that, but then not really, I'm not saying everyone, but like not really thinking about the operationability of that data product, like how it's going to perform, how it's going to be secured, how it's going to be maintained, and do changes when there's a change of requirement, how do you remodel that data? And this is kind of standard software engineering skill that we all know about and we have experience.
So. Yeah, especially also if we are the ones that are building out the cloud infrastructure that these components will be running in, and then we make sure that we have the security in place, we have the logging in place, but then how, if I'm then a data engineer, how do I plug in to that logging that's been set up? How do I get my things to be observable? So I think that's where there's some of the areas where we can work well together and complement each other.
All right. So let's have an honest take on how you really feel about this, because I mean, 6 months ago, or for me personally, maybe a year ago, I always felt like, okay, I'm now getting to, I'm not saying old, but like I've kind of we've learned a lot in the last 2 decades of career, and then thinking like I'm gonna start from scratch and learn a new tool set again, like you said. And I in the beginning I felt like maybe I can skip this part and then focus on, I don't know, so people management or business. But then there's something clicked, like especially this year, that I told myself, no, you cannot escape it. You have to use it, you have to learn it, you have to upskill. And it's a different kind of motivation. And I feel like there's a lot of engineers out there who's like me a year ago, is feeling hesitant to spend even more time on this, because it is a bit frustrating to sometimes learn. Of course, there are people out there who are very excited, for sure. But I also met and talked to a lot of engineers who are feeling that anxiety, apprehension, a lot of like thinking about, okay, what's next for me, my job. So how are you feeling for you personally about all this learning and an influx of knowledge that you need to acquire? And then what do you see around you, like from your peers and colleagues in community, or maybe even in your team? How are they taking this? Are they motivated, or are there more people who are also apprehensive?
I think what I generally see and hear is an excitement around what's possible now, and then maybe a little bit of stress around how fast things are moving. And so I think to some extent it's difficult to keep up with what's going on, especially if you have to take care of your day-to-day job and actually develop and deliver on different tasks or features that you're building. So keeping a handle on what's actually going on in the community I think it's becoming more and more difficult, actually. And things are moving so fast that you've learned one tool yesterday, and then tomorrow something new will pop up that may be even more efficient. But I think now that we're getting in, I think let's say the spec-driven approach is gaining more and more traction. I think that's something that's appealing to developers, because you can actually spec things out. So ironically, documentation becomes very important, right? Something that maybe many of us neglected a little bit, or it becomes an afterthought. But if you actually do it up front now, then you can actually gain a lot by having AI help you build your things if it's well defined. So I think there's a lot of interesting things happening, and I think a lot of people are excited about the opportunity to learn new things. I think we, at least what I'm seeing, I think we're a little bit past the thing that I think was maybe before summer, around summer, there was a lot of talk around all engineers will be out of work because AI will take over and engineers are obsolete. I think we are past that now. I think we are seeing more and more that people realize that's not going to happen, because we need someone that understands it. We need someone to review it, maintain it, and operationalize it. So I think maybe potentially it will be more difficult for juniors coming in, but I hope that it won't change, that juniors can come in and be part of a team and sit together with seniors and learn from them, and see how software progresses over time, and learn from that, and then use that knowledge to, let's say, tame the AI a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I can share my experience in building the product, the startup that I'm working on, using spec-driven development. And then in the earlier part of this year, I was just really using AI a lot to build the infrastructure side of it without specs, and some of the features without spec. And then I started building it with specs. And I do have some opinions, but that's my personal experience. And we don't have to talk about which, I use GitHub spec kit, but for sure there's a lot of tools there, but like on the fundamental things on how to approach spec driven. And I'm constantly learning on how to embed this in the whole life cycle of our engineering, because if I sit as an engineer for back end, I can spec the back end part of it, but what about the front end? Or I can spec the end-to-end stack, but do I spec the entire module, or just a feature, or just a button? Those decisions that you need to make, and there is no formula for that, what to spec. And the other thing where we want to incorporate specs is also from the early stage of the engineering, of the product engineering, which is from the product manager. So we actually have a really good product manager for the startup that started using Figma Make, for example, which also generates the spec, but starting from a user perspective. So our UI designer, she's really, really good at, our UI UX designer is really, really good at coming up with some user journey, and then our product manager kind of add into that, and they collaborate, they talk to the customers, and then within a day they can generate a really full-fledged, high-fidelity mock-up for an entire feature, not just a feature, sometimes an entire module, complete with mock data, very realistic, very good quality mock data, and then write the specs for that. But then the specs turn out to be more user-centric, which is good. So like the acceptance criteria that if I go log in and click this will happen. Nothing really technical. And then I found that the value in there is that we can get that into the code base or the actual source code of the product, and then I can use that to generate another version of the spec, which is like, I see that as a funnel, right? Like you have the business product level, and then you go into more implementation level. And I was so happy. I was like, really, I want to use this word, I don't use it often, flabbergasted.
Okay.
When I saw what it generated on the spec, for the actual source code, because we started with the constitution, right? You start with the constitution, and because I have a lot of experience with architecture, so I know what I want to put on the constitution. I want it to be domain-driven design. There's a repository pattern. It's event-driven. There's no corruption between modules, etc., etc. All the security standards that we have, which stack I want to use for each of this layers like for .NET for APIs, .NET Core, and then React.js. And then we have for the infrastructure, we have Kubernetes. So everything is in the constitution. And then I supplemented that with the spec that generated or enhanced by the product team and the UX team. And then we generated the actual feature spec. So fabulous. Like we built the whole complex feature that would typically take us, I don't know, a couple of sprints, several months, for example, to build end to end in a sprint.
Yeah.
So that's impressive. The easy part. That is impressive, and that's okay for me. This is game changer. So, but of course, you need to kind of work with this, iterate to kind of find the sweet spot. Because at some point, my question is always like, how is the maintainability of this, the feedback loop? So as soon as like something changed on the product side, because they realize they don't want this experience, they change it there, they have to put it in. There's consistency in it, and it's so very easy as a developer to just forget the spec because it has created maybe the entire module or feature, but then you need to change a part of it, and then you just go directly and ask the copilot or your agent to, can you add this feature? Then the spec suddenly becomes out of sync. Yeah. And that's another decision. So that's my experience, and suddenly, well, how do I update it? But this, again, part of the learning. But one thing is for sure, what you mentioned about, we will still need engineers, for sure. More of them maybe. Different skill set, different way of thinking. I really think that this decision making, you have to be very decisive. You have to know how to give instructions, which is a skill in itself. You need to build that. But what I imagine more, so actually what kind of what I realized while I was using it myself hands-on every day is that, we will need more engineers. We will be much more fast. We will certainly be faster, but that we can also build more. So really commoditizing software. Like, why do we have to stick with just 5 products that have monopoly over the whole market globally? Yeah. We're all using the same product, but I'm not using the same brand of shirt as you do, but I want my own. Sometimes I'm not saying that we have to customize everything and we're going back to custom bespoke software for every single problem out there. Yeah. But there's certainly a possibility that there will be more players in the market that does the same thing, and a bit more, we don't have to spend so much more time and energy on consulting for customizing a big product that has global market.
Maybe it's just an opportunity for more specialized products.
Specialized product, that's what I mean. Right, exactly. So more. It's just there's going to be more there. And obviously you still need the typical product engineering team with your software engineers and data people and ops people.
Maybe it will turn around so that AI will be writing the software and then the engineer becomes the co-pilot.
My brain is like not processing that right now. Maybe there's so many kind of like philosophical things that you have to fix. So that's so serious. Let's talk about like your own funny experience with using AI. Is there anything that comes to mind?
I have a good one actually where so I was using Cloud Desktop and I think it was a problem around Entra ID in Azure, some authentication and doing let's say what's it called, the API to API call, or was it backend to backend call? What is it you call it? Service to service. That's what I was searching for. A service to service call. And I was reading through the documentation, and there was some things that were difficult to grasp, and then I couldn't find the right API to call to actually do it programmatically. Let's say when this service over here needs to be able to call this service, then how can I configure it through infrastructure as code or with PowerShell for that matter? So I asked the Cloud Desktop, went in and asked a question around, well, how should I do this? And then it came back with a very elaborate answer, and all of it looked very convincing. And then there was a command in PowerShell, or was it Azure CLI, one of those two. And I typed the command in the terminal, and it didn't work. Like that's weird. And then I went online and searched the documentation, only to find out that the command that is suggested doesn't exist. But it looked very convincing, and it was it seemed so realistic that it was okay. It's called this and this. Yeah, of course it should be called that.
Yeah.
And it was very, I mean, it was a very good command, and it was exactly what I needed, but it didn't exist.
I've had a similar experience. Exactly the same. It existed in an older version of the frame. I think I was working with Nginx because I had to learn Kubernetes with AI, using AI in like 2 months. It went very well. I had to spend one weekend, or maybe that's a weekday, but I did have my 36-hour state. I'm not gonna do that anymore. I can feel that in my body, where like I cannot stop. I have to just go on and on and on and fix this together with AI. So I went through the different stages of like relationship and friendship with AI during that evening, where I'm so happy. It's just like we just started dating, and then the AI was so convincing, and it's actually boosting my ego. It's like, oh, you're so good. That's the right decision. It's always the way, and I feel like, oh wow, I'm a good engineer. And then suddenly it also started doing something wrong, and then I kept telling it it's wrong, and it's like telling me, yes, it's right, but you're right, I'm wrong. Something like that. You're right, it's my fault. It's like, it's you, it's me, not you. So we had that to a point where I'm just really upset. So, don't try this at home, but like spending 36 hours with an AI agent to build something computer-based is crazy. But I had the same experience where you feel like so confident that it's there. And it took me, because you need to push it, right? Like to fix it. And after 2 hours, God, it's not fixed. And then I went on like traditional way. I Googled it, and it's really, really clear on the documentation of Nginx. This is the command you use. And then I replaced that, and it's all perfect.
You need to retrain your AI.
Yeah, I need to, one is to retrain your AI, but then my advice is like, don't also skip the traditional reading of a documentation of a product or a tool that you're using, because sometimes that's the easiest way.
Sometimes the answer is just right there.
Exactly. So I think we're getting a little bit too reliant and spoiled. Like even the most trivial things we use AI for. So that's probably one thing that, especially for the junior developers or entry level, to try to avoid being too reliant. And I say the same with my kids. You have kids, right? Like that we have to rely on tech to make every single decision. Like my daughter sometimes would ask, should I take a train today or not? But what happens to your brain when I'm not saying necessarily that you become less smart. It's certainly a different way of approaching life, but we also have to remind ourselves that even if AI can answer it, we can probably do it even faster.
But there's also, I think, some other things that we learn in school, right, or university, around critical thinking and actually taking a critical approach to the information you find, and being able to look up the sources, and are these sources actually real and trustworthy. So I think with that, I mean, if you're using Claude Desktop or ChatGPT, you don't really see the sources, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think we're getting better and better at also being able to ask it, well, where did you get this, or where's this coming from? Or like, I think a really nice approach is, I've started using Notebook LM more and more, of just putting in books and different learning material, and then asking it questions, and then it actually has references to all of the sources that it's used to build up this knowledge base. So that's actually really nice, that you can, like, just like you read a book and then it has a reference to the source material, that you can actually see that.
So you actually curate you curate the resources that the AI would use to.
Yeah, so basically I'm just it's almost like a RAG approach to fine-tuning an AI, right? But I have like 20 ebooks with different, something around domain-driven design, event-driven architecture, and microservices, and just feed it into Notebook LM, and then it can summarize it. It can make different visualizations of how these things fit together, and I can ask it questions. I can ask it to summarize a book, and then when it mentions certain paragraphs or, let's say, quotes, it can reference the material from where it actually got it. So if it was, say, a quote from Sam Newman's microservices book, it would actually have that as part of a summary. It can also generate a podcast. Hopefully it won't put us out of work, but
so certainly a lot of possibilities and big changes for everyone, and it's a good thing to think about, like food for thoughts.
Yeah.
During the holidays, I guess,
Yes.
or not, or don't think about it, but it's certainly 2026 is going to be so different from how we actually started in 2025.
Yeah, so I guess the recommendation to use the holidays, you can use it either to unwind or you can use it to gain more information and try different things out. Use new approaches to AI in the SDLC, or experiment with SpecKit, or read a book. There's many good books, and if you have a lot of books that you want to read, then you could actually put them into Notebook LM and optimize your time, and then you have more time for eating your Christmas dinners and lunches.
Or eating cookies.
Yeah. So I'm trying to avoid the cookies. I've had too many cookies for the past 3 months.
But December is not the best time to avoid cookies. You can wait until January, right? Like this is also what's your favorite Christmas cookie?
Vanillekrans.
Oh, I also really like that. I like the You Okay? And I mean, I discovered a really good artisan pure pepper nuts at the organic store close to our place in Birkerå. It's really peppery. Like sometimes too peppery. I start coffee, I can really taste.
They take the name literally.
Literally, like I didn't know that pepper nuts are supposed to be really with pepper. But my ultimate favorite would be, what do you call that? Kleine. It's not a cookie. I really love Kleine. So.
But that's like a deep fried cookie, isn't it?
It's basically a donut shaped like I don't know, a pretzel or something, or a diamond. But who cares? It's good.
Oh, now we're getting everyone hungry.
Yes.
Talking about cookies.
No, but
so in wrapping up, we usually talk about the shortcut.
Yes.
Do you have a shortcut for our listeners?
I would say really delve into the spec-driven development, but that requires really understanding specification, and this is the time. We've talked about this as engineers for a long time. Be good at writing specs, even without AI before. Like if you ask all the engineering teams what would be their biggest impediment or challenge, it's really well written specification requirements, and that's alive and well updated and really reflects what the business needs. So for me, being good at writing spec across all stack. If you're in product management, then writing specs for the product. If you're an engineer, writing specs for the code. If you're in ops, writing the spec for how to deploy or what to deploy. It's really good. It's really great. It's a game changer for me. Yeah. What about you?
I'm not sure I have a shortcut yet, but I need to try out SpecKit. So maybe that will be my shortcut into 26. Trying out SpecKit.
But you already did give a shortcut with all the books and
I have the Notebook LM. Notebook LM I think is a good shortcut to learning, at least grasping a lot of material in one go. I think it's difficult. It's difficult for me at least to find time to read books, and I constantly find a lot of books that I find interesting and sound interesting, and I'd love to learn more. So I'd love to have the metric approach where you can just upload a book, plug in, and then upload the book material. But it's like Notebook LM is almost that.
But I think we're getting closer to that matrix kind of experience where you upload all this and you still learn what you needed to learn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And we're there, I think, almost.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I really missed this, Morten. We should do this more often. And we are...
Next time maybe we'll have a guest.
Yes, of course. We'll work really hard into doing that. We have some episodes that would be central to platform engineering. We still have some episodes around that, but of course we'll talk more about AI in engineering and building AI-driven products, and we still want to talk about leadership. That's actually in the context of especially of European companies, like that culture of engineering here and how you lead people. That's still going to be part of our portfolio.
And I think regardless of what we do, the focus of it, or the foundation of it, will always be around product engineering, right?
Yes.
So even when we talk about AI, that's with a focus on product engineering. And of course, when we talk about AI, is also we kind of have to talk about developer productivity as well. So I think we are keeping with the themes and trying to unfold those and get different perspectives of that. And also as more and more companies start using AI for real, there's probably more stories to uncover as well.
For sure. I'm very excited for 2026.
Yes.
Happy holidays, Morten. Enjoy your vacation.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Oh.
Goodbye.
All right. That's good.
Yes, 45 minutes.
Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, and keep discovering shortcuts to engineering great products.